are in Israel. Joel, thanks for being here.
Sure, it's an honor. Thank you.
Wow, 52 weeks. And you say that this past week has been one of the most defining moments in these last 52 weeks. Why do you say that?
Well, I think that several things. It's defining in the sense that Israel has shown more creativity, more aggression, and more success than any other time in this past year. We have taken out the top 4,018 leaders of Hamas. Okay, the top 18 of 18 is the most senior commanders were all taken out in a series of assassinations in the last few weeks, including Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, who has been the demonic driver of Hezbollah, the leader of Hezbollah for 32 years. He's irreplaceable, okay? But the guy they replaced with him, he was assassinated 2 days later. And then they replaced him, and he was assassinated like 3 days later. And so there's a meme going around right now that, wanted CEO of Hezbollah, term of service 24 to 48 hours, pay 72 virgins, and you get a free pager rather. So, and then 4,000 of the next level of senior and mid-level terrorist commanders and operatives were either killed or severely wounded and taken off the battlefield in these exploding pagers and walkie-talkies. So U.S. and Israeli intelligence also estimate now, we just reported this on All Israel News yesterday, that 50%, 50% of the Hezbollah missile arsenal aimed at Israel has been destroyed in recent weeks by Israel. So they still have a lot, but that is a tremendous success. Now the other point is that we're in the most dangerous moment in the war over the past year. Why? Because even though we've defeated Hamas in Gaza, that war is effectively won. Yeah, there are mop-up operations. There will still be terrorists popping out of the woodwork, like termites, and we'll have to take them out. So that'll take time. And half of Hezbollah has been destroyed, including the top leadership. But the main target now is Iran. And the question is, will Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government order a massive military strike to decapitate the Iranian leadership, including the supreme leader Ali Khamenei? Will they launch a massive military and cyber strike to neutralize Iran's nuclear facilities? And might they also destroy Iran's oil refineries in order to cut off the cash that would fuel the terror and the bid for the bomb? And that's why we're in the most dangerous moment of the last year, because the fight has now come to the head of the snake, okay? And that snake is venomous. And if you get him in one shot, this war could be over in a few days or a few weeks, effectively. I mean, I'm not saying there wouldn't be more to do, but effectively, you cut off the head of the snake, you will have won. But Iran has the capacity to fire thousands of ballistic missiles at us. If they can get word and orders through to Hezbollah, what's left of that missile arsenal could be 75 to 100,000 missiles, which could all get launched at Israel in an apocalyptic, effort to destroy us. And then Iran could also activate sleeper terror cells in Europe, in the United States, those who come through Mexico. That was one of my political thrillers, my most recent one, the Libyan diversion. Like what else could happen, not just against Israel, but against U.S. forces in the Middle East, against U.S. targets worldwide, including inside the homeland. So this is a very dangerous week, and Biden and Harris want Israel to surrender. They use the term ceasefire, but it's surrender. And even though we're winning, they don't believe in victory. Watch the CBS 16 Minutes interview with Vice President Kamala Harris last night. She used the word pressuring Israel. She used the term, she won't acknowledge that Netanyahu is America's ally, a democratically elected leader of our main ally that's under attack from 7 directions. She can't acknowledge him as a as an ally. And what she doesn't use in that entire interview is the word, wait for it, victory. Where's Winston Churchill? We will have total victory, victory in the air, victory at sea, victory on the land. Whatever it costs, we will fight them on the beaches, fight them in the hills, fight them in the cities, fight them in the countryside. And we will never surrender until we have victory. We'll never surrender. We'll fight until we have victory. None of that language is coming out of the White House. The world's only superpower, and they're cowards.
You know, it's interesting to watch the world stage right now, Joel, and to see all that Israel has done over the past number of weeks, and to see how so much of the world, including the White House and the United States government, is asking them for a ceasefire. It's coming from other parts of the world as well. If Israel chooses to not stand down, does Netanyahu have the support of the Israeli government and his backing to go ahead and keep going and to take the fight to Hezbollah and to even Iran?
Yeah, I believe so, Steve, and I'll tell you why. So, interestingly enough, Netanyahu is still described by Western journalists as the most unpopular person in Israel, but that has changed. There's a sloppiness to American media reporting, international media reporting. Not surprising, but nevertheless, let's always take the chance to point it out. That's why I started All Israel News 4 years ago, because I was either going to have an aneurysm by being so angry every day at media bias, or we're just going to do it differently. We follow at All Israel News, which is allisrael.com. We follow the George Costanza strategy, the George Costanza doctrine of journalism, right? You remember from Seinfeld when George says, Jerry, every decision I make in my life is wrong. And Jerry says, well, then the opposite would have to be right. And so what we just look at what the media does wrong, what's infuriating, and we do the opposite. And it seems to be working. And our traffic is surging, and people are trusting what we're doing, and for good reasons. So anyway, all that to say, look, I just think that we're at a moment where the opposition to Netanyahu is shifting. Okay, his poll numbers are rising. Why? Because Israelis see him as winning, finally, but they also see him defying the British, who have called for an arms embargo and imposed an arms embargo on Israel. Netanyahu standing up against the French, who have just called for an arms embargo against Israel. He's standing up against Biden and Harris. He's trying not to be disrespectful. Don't get me wrong, but he says, but Biden and Harris keep saying, stop fighting, and he's like, no, we're gonna go win. And I'll just say one more thing. Last week I interviewed Netanyahu's main rival. Okay, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is the most popular political leader in Israel, though he's not in office right now. But he is Netanyahu's main threat. And he just told me, and we just reported it this weekend, yesterday actually, on All Israel News, in an exclusive interview, that he's urging Netanyahu to go finish the job and hit Iran and take out the Iranian, topple the Iranian leadership before they get the bomb. And so when your main rival is with you and says, we're unified, let's get this thing done, that's a good sign. And there's one more. Wait, there's more. One more. Netanyahu's political coalition just went up by 4 seats because one of his other opposition rivals, a man named Gideon Sa'ar, whom we've also interviewed at All Israel News, he just joined the government with his small party, but it's 4 seats. So Netanyahu's numbers have gone from 64 seats to 68 seats. And so what I'm saying is Netanyahu is gaining political power right now, and he's unifying the country because he's not surrendering. He's winning, and people want him to go all the way.
Well, at some point, Joel, doesn't it become, it's not as political as much as protection. Israel's trying to protect itself, and Iran is a threat to the whole world. Where's the disconnect here? How come we, the French, the British, how come we can't see the threat that Iran could be to all of us?
Well, you would like to think on the French, for example, that a country who surrendered almost instantly to the Nazis and have to have the Americans and the British and others come to their rescue would have more compassion for Nazis trying to destroy your country, in this case, Israel, and wipe us all out. Like but the problem is, France and under Emmanuel Macron is a post-Christian, ultimate woke society that doesn't understand power. It doesn't understand strategy. It doesn't understand alliances. They've got great wine and brie, and after that, the beautiful city of Paris. But like, what else are they bringing to the world? Like, it's cowardice and it's tragic. But this is why America must lead. The problem is Israelis. What we're so disoriented about on this horrible, painful, sad 1-year anniversary is we're just in shock at how alone we are in the world, right? On 9/11 and the days that followed, right? I'm an American and an Israeli citizen, so my wife and I and our sons, we lived in Washington D.C. for 24 years. We went through 9/11. What I recall from the British and from all of NATO was that we're all Americans now. That's what they said. And they activated the Article 5 clause of mutual defense of NATO, which says in the treaty that, like, if one part of NATO is attacked, we're all attacked, and therefore we all go and fight. Now, Israel doesn't have that relationship. We're not part of NATO. We thought we had that level of relationship effectively, if not legally, with the United States, but clearly we do not. And so Israelis are struggling. Yeah, we are, but we're sort of circling the wagons. I'm in Denver, so I need to use some Western language. We're circling the wagons, and we're rallying behind a leader who is flawed, but is the right guy at the right time. At least the Israelis, even that disagree with him, or even some who hate him, are thinking, well, he is winning. So, remember, Winston Churchill, was the guy they brought in when Neville Chamberlain was such a coward. And but once Winston Churchill won, then the British immediately got rid of him. So I'm not saying I can't project forward. Does Netanyahu survive this politically? But I'm not interested right now in whether he survives politically. I'm interested in whether Israel survives. As a Christian, I know it will, but it requires leadership. And we don't have good, strong, brave, courageous, principled leadership in the White House. We definitely need it in Balfour Street, which is the home of the Israeli prime minister.
Well, you certainly do have strong leadership coming out of Netanyahu right now. And as he is taking the action that he is taking against Hezbollah and against Iran and going after these terrorist leaders, how is that being perceived in Israel's neighbor countries? I'm thinking Saudi Arabia and other countries there. Does this keep them at bay? Does this embolden them in some way? Does this make them want to be allies with Israel? What's this doing to the rest of the Middle East?
Yeah, that is a great and perceptive question, Steve, because the Abraham Accords countries, of course, Saudi is not yet part of the Abraham Accords, but the 4 countries. Let's set aside Sudan. That's an anomaly and a weird country right now, and it's not the same. But let's take the 3 central countries of the Abraham Accords, which are United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco. These countries are holding, right? They've been critical when they felt they need to be critical, and they want to see Israel do a ceasefire because these are Arabs and Muslims that are being killed in Gaza and in Lebanon, and we get that. But the Abraham Accords have not blown up. Okay, that's exactly what Iran wants. That's why they launched the attacks through Hamas when they did on October 7th of last year, because the Saudis were about to make peace with Israel. And if the Saudis, who are the home of Mecca and Medina, the epicenter of Islam, if they make peace with us, then all bets are off. The rest of the Arab Muslim world will begin to do that too. So that's what the Iranians tried to blow up, because they cannot countenance a world in which Arabs and Muslims see Israel not as a cancer, a tumor to be removed from the Middle East, but as a strong and healthy and embraced and wonderful part of the Middle East, that's what the Iranian regime cannot abide by. But the real cancer is the Iranian regime, not Israel, right? And so the Arab world, I wrote about this in my book, Enemies and Allies, a nonfiction book, a few years ago. Their entire worldview is changing. They used to see Israel as the threat, the problem. Now they know that Iran's regime is the problem and the threat, and Israel is actually the solution. America wants to pull out of the Middle East. Biden and Harris are weak. And Harris could be the next president of the United States. So if you're an Arab and you're thinking, well, who's going to be the true stalwart against the Iranian nuclear threat? It's Israel, not the United States. That's a country you can trust. But it's been rattled this year, Steve. And so where are we now? The last month has given so much encouragement to the Abraham Accords countries and the Saudis. I've spoken to 3 Saudi senior officials, senior and mid-level officials in recent weeks. And I'm telling you, they're ready to make peace. They like what they're seeing. And they're breathing a sigh of relief. Oh my gosh, the Israelis are rallying even without the Americans. Like the esteem for Israel is rising, not just in Israel, let's say not just for Israel, but the esteem for Netanyahu's leadership is rising, not just in Israel, but in the moderate Arab world, because he is their last best hope. Now, that would transfer if Naftali Bennett runs and there are elections and he becomes the prime minister. Fine. Like, it's not the Saudis are not looking to Netanyahu alone to be the person that has to be running the country. But the point is, wow, Israel looked weak on October 7th and in the months following. And you don't want to join forces with a weak partner. Well, how does that help you? But when Israel is strong and decisive and it's winning, people want to join the winning team and they want to be allies with winners. And that's what we're seeing happening right now. And I think that 6 months from now, a year from now, you guys may have me back on this new podcast. And by the way, congratulations on this podcast. And I wish you all the success for it. And I would love to say, like Donald Trump, you're like, just by me being on, it's gonna be incredible. Your ratings are gonna be fantastic. It's gonna be, this is gonna be the greatest podcast there ever was, except unless I start one myself. And I'm just saying, I'm just saying. But anyway, but 6 months or a year from now, Steve, Dawn, I'm telling you, it's very possible that Israel will be seen not as the Jews who are getting their butts kicked, but the dominant superpower in the Middle East, bar none. And if we overthrow the Iranian regime, the Iranian people may rise up and remove the regime, what's left of it. If we destroy Hezbollah, the Lebanese people army, what's left of their government, may rise up and kick out the rest of Hezbollah and sign peace treaties with us. Can you imagine if we have a call a year from now and the Saudis have made peace and the Lebanese have made peace and the Iranians under somebody else that I have had a chance to interview with All Israel News and my TV show, the Rosenberg Report on TBN, which is the Crown Prince of Iran. He's in exile, Reza Pahlavi, right? He's the son of the late Shah of Iran. He told me, imagine, he came to Israel. No Iranian leader in history has ever come to Israel. I sat with him in Tel Aviv and interviewed him face to face. And he told me, Joel, I want to sign the Cyrus Accords. I want to make peace with Israel, between Iran and Israel. And I want to refer to the late, great King Cyrus, who in the Bible not only blessed the Jewish people, but liberated the Jews from Persian Empire, basically slavery, and send us back to Israel with money from the Persian treasury to rebuild Israel and rebuild our temple. That was prophesied by Isaiah and fulfilled in Ezra and Nehemiah. And you can see, so that's either the stuff of my fiction that I write, right, or it could happen in the next few years. And I am more hopeful than ever, but I believe we're in the darkest, most dangerous moment of this war so far, because nothing is assured except God's mercy. And God has mercy and he loves Israel. But Israel's not really asking for God for help. Mostly, evangelicals are interceding for Israel, and that is having a cumulative effect where God is answering the prayers of millions of evangelicals, even though most Israelis still haven't turned to God. Some have, many have, but it's not an en masse, revival or spiritual awakening happening. So I went on too long on that answer, but I just, things could get worse before they get better. So I just want to be cautious, but I also want your listeners, viewers, to think about what the world could look like 6 months or a year or so from now, because even though we're in a dark time, I think the trend line is towards something better, and Bible prophecy indicates that in the war of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38-39. Yeah, something horrible comes. Russia, Iran, Turkey are going to attack someday. But before that, Israel is the most prosperous and safe and secure country in its history, at least since the days of David and King David and King Solomon. And so Solomon, who made peace with the Queen of Saudi Arabia, they weren't the Sauds then, but Queen of Sheba, and he also had peace with Lebanon when he made peace with the king of Tyre, was the main city of Lebanon in that time, not Beirut, that didn't exist, but King Hiram. So we actually have a model that I believe we're heading to. Yes, it gets dark and terrible after that, but for a while, maybe for decades, we will be in a season of great hope and optimism, and I think that's coming. But that's why I'm bullish on Israel's future, and now would be a time to buy low.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I'm just thinking about your political books that I've written or read, your fiction works, and so many times, Joel, I have to think, am I hearing the news right now? Am I really reading a fiction report? Because they just are so well written and feed off of what we do know in the political climate across the world. What have we learned, speaking of learning things, what have we learned when we look back 1 year ago today, October 7th, 2023? You mentioned Israel was seen then as weak and not fortified. Now we see them as winning if they're allowed to continue to do their thing. And Netanyahu is saying, we're going to do it. What have we learned about October 7th, 2023 that is helpful now, October 7th, 2024?
Sure, Don, a couple things. First, your reference to my novels. Yeah, so one of those novels was a novel called The Beirut Protocol. And before that, The Jerusalem Assassin. Jerusalem Assassin was about a Saudi crown prince sending a back channel message through my main character, Marcus Riker. I'm ready to make peace with Israel, but I need the American president to sort of invite me to come do it. And then what happens? The Iranians and the radical Islamists try to blow that summit up. That's the Jerusalem Assassin. And then comes the Beirut Protocol, where the forces of Hezbollah try to destroy Israel in a missile war. So this is seeable. It was knowable. I don't mean the specific intelligence on a given day, but that that's why when you read my novels, they have this feeling of being ripped out of tomorrow's headlines. And I think people would find them interesting, even now, because you'll get a lot of insight into what's really the dynamic that's going on. What have we learned? Well, one, we've learned that too many people in the sophisticated Western, postmodern, post-Christian mindset do not understand or believe that evil exists. That's a terrible truth that's not only inconvenient, but chilling, because the Biden-Harris administration has been trying desperately to persuade the Iranian regime to come back on the on-ramp, to get onto the highway of peaceful coexistence with the community of nations. And they're shoveling billions of dollars at them, and they're trying to persuade them and cajole them. That's because Biden and Harris do not understand the nature and threat of evil. Okay, and so they're all their policies are wrong because they're trying to appease evil rather than defeat it, because they don't seem to believe in the concept of winning. Okay, so unless it's destroying conservatives and evangelicals, they believe in that, but destroying radical Islamist jihadists, that they don't really get. That's one thing that we've learned. Second, we've learned that even a prime minister like Benjamin Netanyahu, who I would have said understood the threat of radical Islamist jihadism better than any leader in the world, was still blindsided by what happened in Gaza. And that's a longer conversation for a different day, but I will say the Israelis were blindsided because we never imagined that Netanyahu would be blindsided. And so Netanyahu was so focused on the Iranian threat and the Hezbollah threat that he considered the Hamas terror threat in Gaza as a tension to be managed, not a problem to be solved. And he was wrong, catastrophically wrong. And very likely there will be a political tsunami that washes him and his government out to sea. But I'm glad that we're not at elections now. This is not a time for political recriminations. We need leadership, and we need unity, and we need a win. And then we can come up for oxygen, lick our wounds, and have an honest conversation about where do we go from here. That's another thing we've learned, is that even a leader like Netanyahu, who has historically been so successful and good for Israel in many ways, not all, there are certainly criticisms of him, but even good leaders can fail. And we've also learned that Israel, most Israelis don't really think about God. They don't read the Bible. They don't believe that the Lord is our shepherd. Now that has implications, because if you're ignoring what David, our greatest king in history and our greatest warrior king, what he taught us in Psalm 23, there's a problem. Some people don't believe that there is a shepherd. Some people believe that they don't need a shepherd. Some people believe the shepherd is mean. Some people believe the shepherd is impotent. But whatever is your, an Israeli view of the shepherd, they're not listening to him. And so they're sheep without a shepherd, effectively. And so what happens is, if you're a sheep that doesn't think you need a shepherd, you're misunderstanding the nature of the countryside. The countryside's not neutral. It's not safe. And the main reason that any sheep needs a shepherd is not just to be fed or to be led to a green pasture that you can eat and lie down and beside quiet waters, and have your soul restored. You need a shepherd primarily to keep you safe, because there are ravenous wolves roaming the countryside. And so this is a very dangerous thing, not just geopolitically, but spiritually. Israel is a nation, sadly, that doesn't know God and has rejected, of course, as de facto, just instinctively, without even looking at the facts, they've rejected the fact that Jesus is the Messiah. So this is a problem, and there are consequences. So that's another thing and that's now more Israelis than ever are now reading the Bible, especially the Psalms, and thinking about it and praying, especially in the military. We're seeing a lot of that. Many are interested in talking about Jesus, or Yeshua in Hebrew. I've had many of these conversations, and I'm encouraged by the general, I wouldn't call it an awakening, but there's a stirring. We're dealing right now in the prophecy of Amos 9:9, the Hebrew prophet Amos, in chapter 9, verse 9. God says through Amos, I will shake the house of Israel among the nations. God didn't send these demonic forces to attack us. That's Satan, who comes to rob, kill, and destroy. But God did sovereignly let it happen. Why? To shake us, to help us realize that America is not the nation that we can trust, ultimately, that we need to turn our eyes to God, to our shepherd, our good shepherd, our chief shepherd. And that is a process that's beginning to happen. So that's another thing we've learned. One more, if there's time.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. That's the nice thing about podcasts, right?
It is. Yes.
Exactly. No radio clock to manage.
So one more, and that is the Palestinians of Gaza, we have learned, are being judged. Now, that's hard for us to say, even as evangelicals, because Jesus doesn't encourage us to think about judgment primarily. Our job is to think about compassion, to love our neighbors, to love our enemies, so much so that we want them to hear the good news that no matter how lost or evil they may be, there is hope to come to Christ. Saul, who became the Apostle Paul, was Jewish, but he was a religious terrorist. He hated the church, he hated Christ, he hated the Gospels, and he was trying to arrest or torture or kill everybody who believed in this. He was a terrorist, okay? Let's just say it. But Jesus changed him. You know, King Nebuchadnezzar, the head of Babylon, the Babylonian Empire, horrible, invades Israel, burns it down, takes all of Judah. I mean, it was Judah at the time, but, you know, takes all of Judah, almost all of Judah and Jerusalem captive. Horrible, horrible person. But he does convert late in his life as God shakes him, you know, makes him go crazy for 7 years. He's like eating grass like a cow out in the field. He just totally loses his mind. But God restores him, and he gives his life to the God of Israel, the God of the heavens, the one true God. That's pretty amazing. If God can save and wants to save Nebuchadnezzar, he can save anybody. And I will add one more. King Manasseh, the king of Judah, who was so evil that it was his evil that set into motion God's judgment of Judah in the Bible, which led to Nebuchadnezzar invading and conquering Judah. But even Manasseh himself, at the end of his life, is radically saved. And his grandson, Josiah, becomes king at 8 years old. But as he grows, he discovers the word of God. He actually sends priests into the temple, which is totally abandoned at that point, and dusty and like cobwebs, and, you know, looks like a scene from the opening scene of Indiana Jones, you know, when he, you know, it was the Lost Ark. He's like in some but they go in and they discover, oh my gosh, look, it's the word of God. Who knew, right? And they start. They're like, and they dust it off, and Josiah starts reading it, listening to it, and he's transformed, and he starts doing reforms, and he starts leading Israel in a godly way. It's pretty powerful, and it's amazing. And for the next like 50 years, Josiah is like this incredible king of Israel, Judah, that is a reformer. He loves the Lord, and he's leading his people back to God. Now, those are stories of people who are evil, lost, wrong, getting saved. Now, what's happening in Gaza is what you have is a consequence of the principle laid out in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, where God, he makes a covenant with Abraham, and he says, I'm going to give you a land, I'm going to make you a great man, I'm going to make you a great family, a great name, a great blessing to the world, and I'm going to give you this land, and through your descendants, I'm going to bless those who bless Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, David, right, all the way through. I'm going to bless those who bless you, but those who curse you, and I would, elaborate a little bit, chronically, consistently, without repentance, without remorse, just cursing. Those who curse you, I will curse. That's what God says. That's an immutable law of the universe. God says that Israel is the apple of his eye. Don't touch it. Don't mess with it. It doesn't mean that God might not have to mess with us when we are chronically disobedient, but don't be an agent of attacking and cursing Israel. But the people of Gaza have done this for 76 years, okay, cursing us every day. They elected Hamas to lead them into jihadist war against Israel. Now, maybe they regretted it later. They didn't get a second chance at the ballot box, right? But this is, and I say this with compassion for the 2.2 million Palestinians of Gaza, but they are experiencing consequences. You can't curse Israel for 76 years every single day. You can't elect a government that then goes into slaughtering babies, cutting off the heads of mothers in front of their children, shooting the children in front of their parents, setting Holocaust survivors on fire alive in their home on the Gaza border. You can't put a live Jewish baby in an oven to bake it alive. You cannot rape Jewish women, Israeli women. You cannot rape Israeli men and boys. You cannot do this in some demon-possessed way and not suffer judgment. Now, that's what we're watching, and we've learned that judgment is messy and uncomfortable and horrifying to watch in the 21st century. Like, we're not used to it. But that's what we're watching. I've been in Gaza in this war. I've covered it, and I've gone in. And I'm telling you, what I saw, Dawn, Steve, is apocalyptic destruction as far as the eye can see. It's incredibly painful. But they brought it upon themselves. And so now the question for the church is not the big question that, everybody's criticizing Israel. Where's your day after plan? What's going to happen the day after? What's your day? That's an important question. But the church has to ask a question. Who's going to take the gospel into Gaza now and in the day after? And let's show compassion to the Palestinians who are going to be, who are shattered, who will be shattered, but God loves them and wants to give them another chance. This is the way he sent Jonah to Nineveh, and the Ninevites did repent, right? So there's hope, but the church has to do our job and not just wait for the rest of the world to do its job.
I so appreciate that challenge to us to do our job, and there are so many different ways we can do that. One of the things you can do is educate yourself. All Israel News, allisrael.com. You could also do something tangibly and help and send support. JoshuaFund.com. Joel is the head of Joshua Fund, and so go check them out, JoshuaFund.com. And Joel, as you reminded us, to pray and to go. And so how, a year removed from the horrible attacks of October 7th, 2023, how would you encourage the evangelical church to pray today?
Well, I think we start by praying for the 101 hostages that remain in those terror tunnels in Gaza. Like, we cannot forget that there are people in there. Now, maybe half of them are dead. Like, we don't know for sure, but we need them out. If there's a deal to be made that's not surrendering, the Israelis are pretty willing to make some sort of deal. We're not going to just give up. But if Yahya Sinwar is the head of Hamas, he's horrible. He should be, assassinated or hanged or something. But I would be willing, and most Israelis would be, to give him and his ilk safe passage out of Gaza in return for the hostages and for a promise that, for the next 5 years or 10 years, we won't kill you yet. Justice will come, right? But I would rather get our hostages back. So that's the first thing, is to pray. Secondly, pray for victory, and that includes praying for Netanyahu and his government to have strength, wisdom, courage. I'm not saying be defiant of the American people or the American government, writ large, but there is a time and a place, right? And I know that even many Christians will be struggling with what I'm saying, but because they say war is horrible, how can you encourage? I'm not encouraging it. What I'm saying is Ecclesiastes 3:8 says there's a time for peace and there's a time for war. This is the time for war. And only if we win will there be peace, okay? Because these people that hate us, Iran doesn't have a territorial dispute with us. It's thousands of kilometers away. Lebanon doesn't have a territorial dispute with us. We left southern Lebanon 24 years ago. Gaza doesn't have a territorial dispute with us. We left Gaza 18 years ago in 2005. So what's the territorial dispute? There is no territorial. They just hate us and they want to annihilate us because they're evil and wicked regimes. So you can't pacify them anymore. We tried to manage these threats. You can't. You have to win. So we need to pray for victory. We need to pray for a change of heart in Biden and Harris, or a change of government. I'm not hopeful for a change of heart, but I just went through a list of people who's, horrible leaders who changed. So we're supposed to pray for our leaders. I pray, I don't know that, sadly, President Biden, I think he should be removed from power under the 25th Amendment out of compassion to him, but also safety for the country. Yes, that will put Vice President Harris into the commander-in-chief slot, which I'm not encouraged by, but we need to pray for her. yes, for her soul and her family, but we need to pray for her to have a change of heart. Um, I'd also say, me personally, I'm also praying for a change of government. Um, I'm praying for Donald Trump's soul. I've shared the gospel with Donald Trump. I've been in the Oval Office, and he said, "Joel, I don't understand. You're Jewish, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I mean, my dad's Jewish. My mom's not. Okay, you're Jewish, and you're an Israeli. Yes, but Mike Pence just called you an evangelical. You're an evangelical. Yes, Mr. President. I don't understand. How can you be Jewish and believe in Jesus?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, are you serious?" And so I explained it to him. Now I haven't had that opportunity with President Biden or Vice President Harris. I would love. I'll take an opportunity if the door God opens that door. I will then call you from as when I walk out. But I'm just saying, I want Trump to know the Lord personally and surround himself with really good people. But overall I do think I'm speaking my own personal capacity, not the nonprofits that I run. But I would say, yeah, I think even though I have a lot of disagreements with Donald Trump on a number of things, Joe, you can't pass me. I'm the greatest president. I've done more for evangelicals than even Jesus. You know it. All right, maybe not Jesus, but still. I mean, I'm incredible for you and your people, and you know that. Everybody knows that, and I'm just saying. And I'm going to be great on China, and I'm going to be great on Iran, and I'm great on Israel. Right. So overall, yes, I think he will be better on all the issues that I care about. He won't be perfect, but it's not even close. It's not a jump ball when it comes to Harris. So, and JD Vance, I don't know him personally, but him, he wiped the floor with Governor Tim Walz the other day, and it's very impressive. Very impressive. I don't agree with JD on everything, but I'm just saying there's a moment here, and I know there's a lot of evangelicals who are like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to vote for Trump because I got raised to believe in character, and I don't agree with and I get that, but politics, certainly in the 21st century, is about making choices between good and better and best, sometimes between good and not so good, or good and evil. And I think overall, I'm convinced. I was a never Trumper in 2016 until 4 days before the election. In the end, my wife said, are you really going to vote against Donald Trump? You're not going to vote for Hillary Clinton, are you? I said, no, I can't do it. I might be Bill Clinton, but I can't vote for Hillary. Oh, sorry, just no. She's like you know, and I said, no, I can't vote for Hillary. She said, so, but you're not ready to vote for Trump because you don't believe he'll keep his promises, right? His conservative promises. I said, right. She said, but you believe that Hillary will keep all of her liberal, crazy, progressive, dangerous promises, right? Yes. Well, then, okay, then you just have to hope that by voting against her and for Trump, and in that case, at that time, Mike Pence, who's an evangelical, a personal friend, a reader of my novels. She says she didn't say it. Maybe I just heard it in my head, but I was like, I felt like she was saying, you're not going to vote against a ticket that somebody on that ticket actually reads your books and likes them. That's your plan? No, but her point was, like, maybe Trump will only do 10%, 20% of what he says, but isn't that better than nothing? And having that, and for me, the answer was yes. And of course, he did far more for evangelicals, for conservatives than I never imagined that much. That's a part of the conversation I had with him in the Oval Office. So all that to say, but I meet evangelicals like, I'm not doing it. I was like, look, okay, I understand about the characters issues and the tweets and I get it, but look at all that he's gotten done. We only have two choices here. Someone who wants abortion on demand all 9 months, who's cutting Israel loose, who's, who doesn't, Kamala Harris doesn't understand the difference between a man and a woman, thinks you can switch them, doesn't believe in the Bible, doesn't believe the first 3 chapters of Genesis. Like that there's a God, that he made man, he made woman, there's a marriage. She's for everything that we disagree with. And she's also a bad leader and incompetent, and has allowed an invasion of 10 million illegal people to flood our country. Like, shouldn't she be stopped? So anyway, that's where I am. That's what I'm praying for, that there'll be a change. But look, God can work either way. His will not be thwarted. So we shouldn't get freakish about it, but we should do our job and vote the person who's more likely to advance our values, even if he does not necessarily share those values or embody those values the way we wish he would.
Well, Joel, this is a conversation that I wish we had more time to have, because this is a really big one, and I think it would be a fun one to really begin to unpack. But as you talk about the need for prayer in Israel, I'm also reminded of the need for prayer for our country as well. Yes, pray for Netanyahu, pray for the leadership of the United States of America. I think both countries are in desperate need of prayer. Both countries stand kind of on a precipice of major ramifications, depending on which way we go over the next handful of weeks and months. And so appreciate your reminder for us to be in prayer for what's going on in our world today. And my last question for you right now is, it is 1 year from the attack of Israel by Hamas on October the 7th. How is Israel remembering that today? Certainly today has got to be, at least in some sense, a day of remembrance in the country.
Yeah, all over the country, Israelis have gathered to mourn their loss. This is a time when evangelicals, we need to be weeping with those who weep. Right out of Romans 15, Israelis are a broken and shattered people right now. God is being merciful, and as I say, I think the hands of Israel are being held up, as it were, by evangelicals who are interceding for the nation of Israel in prayer. And thank God we are doing that. We need to keep doing it. But Israelis are shattered. They're in mourning. They're also under attack. My last check was we were at close to 200 missiles had been fired at Israel today. So even people who are gathering near the Gaza border or at state cemeteries or at the Nova Music Festival site, where hundreds and hundreds of Israeli young people were slaughtered point blank. People have had to run and duck and go to bomb shelters and find cover. So and there's nationally televised ceremonies. It's a day of terrible mourning, and remember, Israel is still a country born out of the ashes of the Holocaust. There are many Holocaust survivors, or at least the children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, who are having flashbacks to, PTSD has triggered because Jews have been slaughtered again and the world has turned against us. And we've seen this movie before. We don't like this movie. We didn't have a state in the 1930s and 40s, and now we do. And I don't know where the state was on the 7th. It did a horrible job protecting us, but at least it has kicked in now. So thank you for this time. I do have to jump onto another interview, but we're mourning right now. And I appreciate you giving me the time to talk about this with your audience, to talk about what it means and where we're going from here.
Joel Rosenberg with us. He is the founder-in-chief, or the editor-in-chief, and the founder of All Israel News, allisrael.com, to find out more. Again, if you want to support what's going on in Israel in terms of humanitarian relief and bringing the good news of hope to the people of Israel, joshuafund.com. And you can check out the Rosenberg Report. It airs on TBN, and I encourage you to check that as well. Joel, thank you for your time today. Certainly appreciate that. And I hope that you will like and subscribe the Don and Steve Plus channel here, and make sure that you're checking every podcast out. And look forward to talking to you next time.